From official sources, we know that he is the greatest villain in human history. Adolf Hitler shot himself in his bunker on April 30th, 1945, and his wife Eva Braun took cyanide. But it seems we have been deceived. Foreign journalists found out that on April 28, 1945, Hitler was indeed able to escape from the battle-torn Berlin. Few people know that the leader of the USSR, Joseph Stalin, did not believe in Hitler's death until the end of his life. Despite the fact that the so-called remains of the Führer were in the USSR, Stalin was always skeptical about his death. No evidence could convince him of that. In terms of his psychological profile, Hitler was neither a suicidal type, nor a hysteric, nor a psychopath. He was a cold and calculating man. Stalin was obsessed with the possibility that Hitler might have escaped, possibly with the help of the Allies. But what made the leader of all nations come to such a conclusion? It is worth paying special attention to the fact that after the capitulation, Bormann was taken prisoner. Nazi military leaders reported during interrogations that they had stopped receiving orders from Hitler's headquarters after April 22nd. Captured officers from Hitler's staff and inner circle said that they were surprised by the changes that had happened to the Führer after the bombing of Berlin began. The Führer changed in appearance and behavior. He hardly left his office. But none of them thought that there was already another person in front of them. A double of Adolf Hitler, who started to periodically replace the Führer after the assassination attempt on him. Historians claim that it was indeed his body that was found and mistaken for Hitler's corpse. But let's take it step by step. English historians Simon Dunstan and Gerard Williams conducted an independent investigation. For 5 years, they traveled the world, sifting through mountains of evidence and documents, interviewing witnesses. And in the end, they were convinced of a terrible fact that goes far beyond the official history. In 1945, one of the greatest villains of the era managed to hide in Argentina. He organized the escape of the century. Martin Bormann, historians claim. Bormann was the most insidious and mysterious man in the Nazi leadership. He was the head of the party chancellery and Hitler's personal secretary. By 1943, when Bormann realized that the war was lost, he began planning Operation Flight of the Eagle to remove the stolen gold, precious stones, and other valuables to safe havens around the world. Bormann's second operation, codenamed Fireland, aimed to provide a secure refuge for Hitler and his inner circle, so that there would be a base to lead the revival of Bormann and Nazism after the war. Bormann's choice fell on Patagonia, a vast and almost uninhabited area in the south of Argentina. Germans have settled here for a long time. In fact, it was a German colony in Latin America. Moreover, in 1943, a coup took place in Argentina, as a result of which Juan Domingo came to power, Perón, who sympathized with the Nazis. It was to this country that Bormann directed the looted Golden Stream. Just the gold alone is worth $50 billion at today's prices, claim Dunstan and Williams. Helping Martin was SS Gruppenführer Heinrich Müller, the head of the Gestapo of the Third Reich. Another assistant was SS Gruppenführer Bormann Fegelein, an old friend of Bormann and the husband of Eva Braun's sister. At midnight on April 28, 1945, Operation Fireland entered its decisive phase. Hitler, Eva Braun, Bormann, Fegelein, and 6 loyal SS members disguised themselves in hooded cloaks and quietly slipped out of the famous Führer bunker through a secret passage in the subway tunnel. The 7-kilometer underground passage took 3 hours. Once outside at the main exit of the Furberliner Platz station, the fugitives saw 3 Tiger II tanks and 2 half-track armored personnel carriers, Sendekraftfahrzeug Durfinfetien, waiting for them to take them to the temporary runway located a kilometer away on Hohenzollern-Damm. But already, without Bormann, the leader of Operation Fireland had unfinished business in the Führer's bunker. On the runway, a Ju-52 plane awaited the Nazis, piloted by SS Hauptsturmführer Peter Baumgart. The Ju-52 took the fugitives to the airfield in the Danish town of Tønder. It's worth noting that in 1947, Baumgart, in his testimony at a trial in Poland, confessed that he personally transported Bormann, Adolf Hitler, and Eva Braun the day before their supposed suicide. No one in the courtroom took the German pilot's statement seriously. It's amazing, note the English journalists. But no one even tried to track the fate of Peter Baumgart himself. And after his release in 1951 from the Mokotów prison near Warsaw, he simply disappeared from sight. From Tønder, the group flew to the German Luftwaffe base in Travemünde on another Junkers. From there, they took a third plane to the Spanish Air Force base in the town of Reus, which is 110 kilometers from Barcelona. That Spanish plane will later be dismantled to cover up the traces and prevent Western allies from accusing dictator Franco of aiding Hitler's escape. From Reus, the Spanish Air Force plane delivered the fugitives to the ultra-secret Nazi facility, Casa Winter, located on one of the Canary Islands. Meanwhile, in Berlin, Bormann and Müller were covering their tracks. The Führer's bunker housed the doubles of the leader and his mistress. The secret services found Adolf Hitler's double Gustav back in 1941. He turned out to be a certain Gustav Weber, who worked in a printing house in the Polish city of Breslau and was originally from Austria. A very distant relative of Hitler who was unaware of his kinship with the Führer. One day, Gustav Weber disappeared and became the only student of the secret university. In complete secrecy, the double underwent a special course, studying only one subject: the life and habits of Adolf Hitler. Weber was weaned off smoking and forced to lose extra pounds. He was trained in the way of walking, expressing emotions typical of Hitler during public speeches, the Führer's habits in everyday life, and all the little details of his behavior. The only detail that could reveal the switch was Weber's hand. At times, she was seized by fits of uncontrollable trembling. No one in the Führer's inner circle, except for Bormann and Müller, knew about the existence of the double. The name of Eva Braun's double is unknown. You saw her in the corpses of young actresses that Weber kept for his own pleasure. Eva and the actress looked very similar. Plus, the makeup artists and hairdressers worked their magic. By the end of the war, Weber was increasingly substituting for Hitler. Upon returning to the bunker, the cunning Bormann organized the famous wedding of the doubles. When he received the message that the head of the Nazis was in a safe place, Weber was shot at point-blank range. The doubles of Eva and the shepherd dog Blondie were poisoned. The bodies were brought to the surface and buried. Soon, they will be found by Soviet soldiers. But we return to Hitler. The ultra-secret winter cache base was located on an uninhabited island. Bormann created a disposable object in 1943 specifically as the main transport hub for the escape of the Führer and his inner circle. Here, the couple, Hitler and the shepherd dog, boarded the U-518 submarine. They had a long journey of 8,500 kilometers to Latin America. On the night of July 28, 1945, the submarine reached Argentina. The fugitives spent the night at the Miramar Villa, and the next morning, they flew to the San Ramon Ranch on a biplane of the Argentine Air Force. At that time, the Germans completely controlled all access points to the city of San Carlos de Bariloche, near which the ranch was located. No one could enter or leave this territory without the official permission of the local Nazi leaders. Hitler and Eva lived here for 8 months. In March 1946, the workers at the ranch were informed that the guests had tragically died in a car accident. Their bodies, they say, were burned beyond recognition. In fact, Chita was transferred to an even more secure hideout, the Inalco Mansion. This secluded mansion is located at the foot of the Andes on the remote shore of Lake Nahuel Huapi. On the surrounding wooded hills, Nazi observation posts monitored all approaches from land, water, and air. Until October 1955, the Inalco Ranch was Hitler's main residence. In 1948, Bormann and Müller appeared in Argentina, wrapping up all the secret affairs in Europe. Hitler's wife, Eva, was very sad in this isolation. She was a cheerful and carefree woman who loved lively gatherings. Such a way of life was not for her. Her beloved Adolf, who once looked so vibrant surrounded by his sycophantic associates, was now constantly ill. His former greatness faded in the solitude of rural life and the cares of 2 small children. Yes, English journalists claim that the Führer has fathered offspring. So for Eva, who felt her youth slipping away, her husband probably became a terrible company. In 1954, she finally left her husband, moving with her children from Inalca to the town of Neuquén. The post-war organization led by Bormann, made up of former SS members, constantly kept an eye on her. After the coup in Argentina in 1955, when Juan Perón fled the country, Bormann transferred Hitler to a small estate called La Clara in a remote corner of Patagonia, leaving him with a personal doctor, Otto Lemona, and the servant, former Unteroffizier Heinrich Bett. On February 12, 1962, Hitler had a stroke. The left side of his body was paralyzed. Soon, he fell into a coma. February 13, 1962. At 3 p.m., Dr. Lemon confirmed that there were no signs of life in the patient. The former dictator just barely missed reaching 73 years old. As for Bormann and Müller, it is known that in 1980 they were still living in Argentina. There is no information anywhere about when and where they died. Both Nazis were skilled at covering their tracks. Nothing is known about Eva Braun and her daughters either. It's unlikely that Eva is still alive. She would be over 100 years old now. As for the Führer's heirs, they might still be living in Argentina or somewhere else.